Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the newest project for the channel. I am going to be running through Rise of Insanity today. This is an entry into the walking simulator, psychological horror genre is how I would most closely classify this. So if you've enjoyed games like Amnesia, The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, or Layers of Fear, this game sort of has the same vibes. And we're not going to be doing a whole lot of really interactive gameplay. We're more or less just going to be interacting with the environment and trying to figure out what's going on with this game's story. I will go over all of the game's achievements, the collectibles, and it will be a 100% run. I will upload this as one whole video because it really doesn't take us that long to run through it. We'll get a bit of a warning here, but I wouldn't say this game is particularly scary or gory or overly triggering.
Keep calm, relax, and calm down. Calm all your senses. My name is Dr. Stephen Dara. You are here because your disorders started to get out of control. You ceased to behave normally, and disturbing thoughts took control over you. You will undergo my original therapy. I will show you the film I created. And at the end, you will tell me what feelings you have while watching it, and if you saw anything worrying.
Definitely a bit of an odd introduction to the game, but we do work as a psychologist, so I guess maybe that meant something to him that it doesn't mean to us. Telling us to calm down and relax has the exact opposite effect, but now we are able to take control, and we find ourselves in what looks to be maybe a home office or something. So we're now going to be able to interact with things in the world. I will be showing you where things are, collectibles, and just anything else that might be sort of interesting as we go along here. And each time we start a new chapter, so to speak, we will be able to start off with these audio logs.
The patient's data. Edward, 41 years old, day September 1st. I know Edward as far back as I remember. He worked as a gardener in our neighborhood. From the preliminary interview, I got to know that he suffers from a dream disorder. He has constant nightmares and can't sleep well as a memory disorder. Sometimes he doesn't remember what happened a couple of days or hours ago. I have some suspicions connected with his case, but it's too early for the detailed diagnosis.
Alright, so that is our introduction. We will most definitely learn a lot more about Edward and we'll also learn some more things about Steven as we go along. And right off the bat, you can see that you can open up drawers and you can interact with a lot of different things in the environment. And that's half the fun of this game, is just looking around and seeing what it is that you can find. And there is an achievement for opening up things like desks and drawers and cupboards, but that will probably come naturally without you having to farm it at all. We will pick up any text notes that we find, because these also count towards an achievement, but it is sort of hard to know what counts and what doesn't. We just have some notes here about Edward with a nice typo. A typo that they correct if you bring up the text on the screen, but Steven's just written a bit of a checklist here. And there is no log in the main menu. There's nowhere anywhere that like keeps track of anything that you are picking up. So just interact with anything that looks interesting. Like there's this ink blot over here on the counter. Whether or not that counts, I don't know, but I will just sort of point these things out. There is also a book that we can pick up behind us. Steven is a little crazy about birds. We could see that from the film. Apparently he's been crazy about birds since he was a kid, because this was a book that he got for his 7th birthday, which seems a little odd. That seems like a move that an aristocrat living in the 1800s would give to their child. But Steven's maybe just a bit of a weird dude. We can see he also has a bird cage here. And birds are definitely one of the big themes that we're going to see throughout this game. Very weird that this is empty except for just a random ball sitting in the bottom. So we will find things that like don't quite make sense or seem kind of out of place, but that is sort of part of the mystery. There is a photo in here. I'm assuming it's probably a family portrait, but why the eyes of our child and our wife are scratched out, I don't quite know. Guess we'll find out. And then this big double wardrobe to the right of the door, in the very bottom right cupboard, you're gonna find a rubber duck, which again, very out of place, but there are 15 of these in the game, and if you collect every single one of them, you will get an achievement. I have played this game many a time before, and I feel like the ducks were added into later versions of the game, because I do not recall there being ducks earlier on, but maybe I'm just crazy. There's a child's toy here immediately in front of us as we leave. And crime scene tape really does not bode well at all. But it serves a purpose to block us from really going anywhere. This game is extremely linear, and aside from opening up cupboards and exploring the rooms that you're in, there's really not a lot of going around and exploring different areas within a level. We do have another piece of paper here. It looks like this might be from a magazine, maybe an article on us doing some experimental treatment, with a picture of the projector from the very beginning. And you'll see as we go along, of course, more crime scene tape.
The family's tragedy. A mother and child were murdered, and the violator was...
So very, very few places in the house that we can go. Really, the only option is going to be through this big open door here. There's a piece of sheet music here on the piano, but other than that, we can just go and explore this area. It looks like there was tape here at one point, but I guess it's been cleared. And this is not related at all, but how weird that this is all brick. This is like a hybrid living room kitchen area, but this just feels so depressing with the brick. It feels really dark and lifeless. There's no paint on the walls, there's no pictures, there's no nothing. It's kind of boring. We have a piece of paper here that is addressed to our wife, from Edward, in fact. I would like to remind you that you gave me a free hand in the development of one part of the garden. Therefore, my decision was to mainly plant dahlias. I have accentuated them with clematis flowers. I surrounded everything with white poppies. We did hear Stephen mention that Edward is the neighborhood gardener, so maybe that's how we got to know him a bit more intimately. He started working at our house, on our garden, got to know us, and then asked us for help. There really is not a lot to see here for this being such a big area. There are a few more things to see in the kitchen though, however. We have a report card, and this gives us the name of our wife and our son. And our son is looking like he is a pretty smart kid. He's got all A's and B's. And in the kitchen, again, there's going to be lots of drawers that you can open if you'd like.
Honey, please turn off the TV. It's going to be stormy.
Alrighty, I'll do it in a second. Just let me finish my train of thought here. But as we go on, I will mostly be focusing on the drawers that I know have something, the areas that I know have a document or something for us to pick up. So the last thing in here is just this little sticky note here. And again, whether or not that counts towards anything, I don't know. But I am going to just interact with that regardless. And if you want an achievement here, we can rebel against our wife and completely ignore what she said about the TV. We are supposed to turn the TV off to advance, but if you just wait it out and don't turn the TV off, at a certain point, we will hear a phone ringing, and that's going to be our cue to move on with the story. And if you turn the TV off normally, the phone will start ringing instantly. And this does take quite a long period of time, but if you just hang out here, don't move, stay in the living room, kitchen area, the phone will eventually ring on its own and you will get an achievement. If you turn the TV off and listen to your wife, then you don't, but you do get to move on a little bit faster. I have already unlocked this achievement, so it's not going to pop for me. But we can stand around and wait if we want.
A few moments later.
So there we go. TV is still on. Phone is ringing. If we just ignore the TV, leave it on, and interact with the telephone.
Am I talking with Dr. Stephen Dowell?
We will move to the next level. You should get an achievement for that. And it looks like we're now in another one of our offices, but perhaps at the hospital that we work at. If we work at a hospital, that would be my guess. So we'll start out the chapter with another audio log.
Patient Edward 41. Day September 11th. Patient has told me about his dreams where he tries to murder his wife and child. As far as he said before, he's a bachelor, and he hasn't said anything about children. It could be some traumatic memory from his childhood. I have to get to know about it during our next meeting. It is a harder case than I expected. Some symptoms indicate that the patient can possess multiple personality. But these are only suspicions. I have to ask my friend, Abraham.
Alright, so that was 10 days after our first session with Edward. So continuing to treat him, learning a little bit more about him. We have a sticky note here as well. It's nothing certain. Please come to the morgue for identification purposes. And then the only other thing in the office, aside from just a few things to look at in the background, is going to be this letter over here. It's a bit of a long one. Stephen did mention his friend Abraham in his audio recording, and it does look like he did follow through and send a letter. Dear Abraham, I apologize for not having written so long. I was occupied with family and work matters and did not have enough time. I trust that you were okay. How is your wife, Berta? I currently have a case of a certain patient, Edward, redacted. He is 41 years old. He is reporting problems with sleeping and memory. I noticed he seems to have certain minor tics. There are times when he suddenly and strangely moves the small finger of his left hand. He told me about a nightmare that has been haunting him for some time. It is the only dream that he is able to remember. He told me he had attempted to kill his wife and child in that dream. However, he was not able to do it. He constantly wakes up before the very end. It is very strange because Edward is a bachelor and does not have any children. What do you think of this? My assumption is that these are the beginnings of schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder. However, you are the one who has more experience in psychopathology. Best regards, Stephen Dowell. Always good to consult your colleagues if you're not sure. And he does seem serious about trying to help Edward, so he's learning a little bit more about him. And I really do wish that this game had a button to zoom in on stuff. Unfortunately, it doesn't, which I think is a huge oversight, because some people would want to zoom in and just read the titles of all of these books, and you can only see some of the ones that are in larger print. That's more or less just a bit of a critique from me. Something I noticed as I went along. There's a lot of posters on the walls as we're going to go through. Fortunately, a lot of these you don't need to have a zoom in for. You can read these if you'd like. We are in a hospital now, so very, very depressing, not very well lit hospital, I might add. In room 6 over here, which is just to the right, there is a little scrap of newspaper in the drawer with it's missing, of course. It wouldn't be that easy to find out about a mother and her 7-year-old son that has been murdered. And for some reason, there are a lot of posters around. You might notice this, not just here, but in other parts of the game, about syphilis, of all things. I'm not sure why. I don't know if it was like a big thing in this era that we're in or something, but this looks to be an examination room, obviously. And once again, you can open up drawers and things if you'd like, but those are the only 2 rooms that we can go into for now. Everything else is blocked off. We are going to be heading downstairs to the morgue. We're gonna slowly make our way there because there was a body that we were supposed to go and check out. And I have cranked the brightness up as far as it will go. But there are still going to be parts in this game that are extremely difficult to see, and I don't know how well this is going to come up on a recording. I might have to look at some things in editing. Here, you can barely see where you're going, but as soon as you come to this four-way fork. You're going to turn to the left, immediately to the left, beside this dead crow and candle. We will have our second duck collectible. And as we go through, we'll notice that a lot of these doors are locked. We're going to go to the very, very end of the hallway. And then this door on the right is going to have another ink blot for us to look at, as well as a random toy in the sink. Finding a lot of random toys. Wooden toys, too. I think this is another toy similar to the one that we found earlier outside of Steven's office at home. And we have our first puzzle, I guess you could call it, with a bit of a clue here. A key to her heart is located where your journey began. Honestly, not the best clue in the world, but I will tell you how to solve it. It's been a while since I actually did my practice run of this, so I don't remember all of the audio / jump scares, so there might be a few that kind of catch me off guard. Rather than just put the code in because I know exactly what it is, we don't want to miss out on that craziness, first of all. Second of all, even though this door opens and you would think, hey, this is where the journey started. Ooh, spooky. It doesn't quite give you the clue. It gives you a clue to the code, which is to go back and check room number 6. And that's about the only thing in this room that has changed. And we can see that the chart has changed now, and our code is going to be 629. That is not a randomized code. It's the same code every single time. So if you just are speed running through this, or you don't care to come back up here, or you wanted to avoid the jump scare, or whatever the case may be, it is not a requirement to come back up here and to grab that. You can just put that code in and not bother coming back up to check where it is, but that is not something that we would have been able to get before we came down to the morgue, because I checked that eye chart when I was in that room the first time, and there was nothing there. So we're gonna hear more spooky sounds behind us. We'll go ahead and open up the door to the morgue. And now the door is closed and we're locked in. We can't get out. So we don't have any choice here but to check this document here. And unfortunately, again, we can't read any of this stuff. Maybe we're not meant to. Maybe this is completely unrelated to what's going on. The autopsy was just something that Stephen had to do for another case. Although why a doctor of psychology would be doing an autopsy, I wouldn't know. But in any case, apparently it's no match. And so at this point, we just have to keep jiggling the door handle and making Stephen more and more afraid as the room fills up with blood before we can move on. Yeah, we'll get ourselves another lovely jump scare. And then we get into this weird room that's just full of bird paintings. Again, Steven is super into birds. Crows especially. So this document here is just going to basically tell us you can use the right stick to steer the bird. And we need to navigate this bird without hitting any walls. We're going to basically navigate our way through this area. Now there is an achievement for doing this without dying, and that's very important because if you do die, which just means hitting something, you will just be propelled forward. The game will move on, and you do not get another chance at this. The only way to reattempt it for the achievement would be to restart the game all over again. This game does not have any chapter selects or anything like that. So this is very easy. It's not anything to worry about. We don't even really have any obstacles to watch out for, but just be careful. Once you've made that through, you'll pop an achievement, we'll answer the phone here, and move on to the next level.
Honey, gain control over him, please?
And now it looks like we are somewhere outdoors. It's very, very dark out here, but we do have some lights to guide our way. I can only assume that this would be our garden, the very same garden that we would have hired Edward to tend for us. It actually looks like quite an extensive area, and the greenhouse is locked. That is our prime objective in this area. And as I'm walking around here, I am just so hoping that this is not going to be too dark to see when I get this all into editing. But hopefully I'll be able to fix it and lighten it up a bit if need be. There's someone in the background here.
You shouldn't be there.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm, just a little bit turned around. Do you want to give me some directions? No? Okay, well, that was very rude. We have only come for the key to the greenhouse, which is going to be inside of the wheelbarrow. However, we can also see that there is another duck collectible sitting nearby as well, so be sure to grab that. And then we can just start the trek back to the greenhouse so that we can open it up. Fun fact, while I was doing practice for this game, for some reason the run button on my controller was not working. Every other button worked except for that one. And I knew that you could run in this game, could not figure out for the life of me what the heck was going on. And I only just noticed as I was approaching the greenhouse, and it was very faint. But there's a child crying in the background. I don't know that I have ever noticed that before, despite how many times I've played this game.
Daddy, play with me.
And, yeah, hey, we recognize this ball. It's kind of worth exploring all the little crevices and drawers and stuff as you come across them, because this ball was in Steven's home office in the cupboard, the very, very first room that we were in. So that's just kind of a neat little throwback. I'm going to look at this document that is inside of the little toolbox here. And it looks like it's a poem from Eddie. Where is the border between a dream and reality? What is our life? Is it that what is dreamt, or that what we dream about? Tell me, dear Susan, what would you do if you couldn't sleep? Would you be able to take control over the dream that does not come, but haunts you? I feel like that's Eddie talking a little bit about his own life and his recurring nightmares. I couldn't imagine how that would feel to not be able to sleep, and the times that you do sleep, you have this horrible recurring nightmare about murdering your entire family. And once we've looked at that, unfortunately, we can have a look at the death certificate for our son, Theodore. And he was apparently strangled in his sleep. Now, children are pretty defenseless to begin with, but maybe this was meant to be merciful? Go in when they're sleeping and do it that way? I don't know. That's very sad. I can't imagine how that would feel for Stephen.
Daddy, you allow him.
I'm sure that Stephen didn't just stand there and let this happen, but I'm also assuming that that's probably more Stephen's guilty conscience talking. And that's it for this short little section. We can answer the telephone and move on.
Daddy! Daddy! He's here! He's back!
So the plot thickens. We're now back at home, and we are inside of Theodore's bedroom. So we now have confirmation that our son has died, and we're in the place where he died. He was strangled in his bed. It's pretty eerie and creepy to think about. So hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about that. And we have a report from a teacher is what this looks like. Theodore is a very talented child. He is very calm, and he has the character of a dreamer. The only thing that disturbs me is the shadowy shape, which often appears in his drawings. It's probably a character from a comic or something. Nothing to be worried about. I mean, is it? Is it though? We will be coming back into Theodore's room a couple of different times, and more things are going to unlock as we get the chance to come through here. There is a drawing with said shadowy figure here, and that red ball that we saw earlier. We've also got the crows. So, interesting. I wonder who the shadowy figure is. I wonder if we're going to find that out. Now, this is the first of Theodore's drawings, which is another collectible that we're going to be able to find throughout the game now that it has been mentioned. And then there is this toy sword leaning up against this chest, and this is yet another collectible. We're supposed to collect 3 pieces of a knight's costume or like knight-related toys. This achievement has been known to bug, though. Sometimes you only need to pick up 2 pieces for it to count. But I will show the location of all of these things. So the sword here is in Theodore's room. And for now, I think that's everything that's in this room. And we will find ourselves back in our home. And yeah, that's how we kind of progress through our house, is we just learn more and more. And then the crime scene tape gets removed as we are transported back into the lives of Stephen and his family. And the house is also going to look a little bit different this time. We're not able to gain access to the upstairs at all. And we'll get a bit of a warning here. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So going into the kitchen will kill you. You will get a death. And I want to just showcase what that looks like. Shadowy figure threw a knife at me and killed me. Now, I find myself back in Theodore's room, which is kind of where we started the level. You don't have to pick these text pieces back up, but if you pick them up again, they do count a second time because we've sort of restarted our checkpoint, I guess is how I would best describe it. So this is a good, valid way to sort of farm extra documents and extras of picking up Teddy's drawings towards our achievements for those. There is also an achievement for dying, I think, 5 times. And so if you want, you can farm that right now. It's very, very quick. All you have to do is just run in a couple times and do that. But I have another area that I prefer to do that in, so I will showcase that a bit later, but I thought I would just show that off because dying in this game really means nothing. It's very, very forgiving. So here's a note from good old Edward once again to our wife. I am very pleased that you fancy my floral composition. I have received your comments and further recommendations. I will plant rhododendrons as per your wish. I know nothing about gardening, by the way. I will have to drive my car in front of the greenhouse to move the seedlings. I hope you do not mind, Edward. I believe that this was a follow-up to an earlier note that we found between Edward and our wife. So clearly, he's probably been employed for a little while now, and maybe he's getting a little bit more comfortable around the family, a little bit closer to us. Still keeping it professional though, still talking about his job. And he comes off as just very sane and normal in this letter. The crime scene tape has disappeared off of this door now. And we are going to be plunged into some more darkness because we are missing some fuses. But even though we are going to be going into the basement, the lighting down here doesn't seem to be affected. Stephen does not appear to be much of a handyman because the conditions down here are pretty gross. There are live rats running around, and then there's a big old dead one here on the floor, so just watch your step when you come down here. And in the dead end on the right, as you enter into the basement, we can find Theodore's shield. So this is the second part of the night set. Despite the fact that there is one more piece to this set to be found, I got the achievement for getting the full set at this point. So I will still disclose where the last remaining location is, but that is there. And then this first door on the right, we can come in here if we want to, but we can't do much in here right now. There's a puzzle here that we can't mess around with. There's also the solution to the puzzle. But why don't we grab the ducky while we're here off of this gurney. I'm not sure why we have that, but I'm not going to ask too many questions. And even with how unfinished this basement is and how lacking on upkeep, Steven still has his whole dedication to the birds bit going on. He still has pictures of all of his beloved birds down here. You gotta hand it to him. The man is dedicated. And there's a big thing staring at us on the left side of the room, but let's have a look over here first. There's another ink splotch on the ground. And then if you kind of stay at ground level and you look along the shelves on the bottom, this is where we'll find our fuses. And then as soon as you pick those up, you'll hear some pipes start to hiss. And apparently we are also a vampire, because there is no reflection in this mirror. We've got some of Teddy's toys laying around, but nothing else in here that we can really investigate. So now it's time to come over to this area. This is, of course, staring us in the face. This looks like a huge collection of letters. Some of these you can kind of read a little bit. I'm getting the sense that these are articles that Stephen has taken out of books or something, because a lot of it is talking about psychology related stuff. But we do have a letter from Abraham here, and I had to quickly check my settings because I definitely have the game set to English. So some of the pages on this wall are in English, but the letter to Stephen from Abraham is definitely not in English. But then when I click on it, it's in English. Probably just another oversight. But anyways, this is correspondence. This is a reply from Abraham regarding the letter that we sent him when we were at our workstation at the hospital. Dear Stephen, my wife is very well as usual. Let's move to the essence of the case. You should remember that we have had a similar case in the past. It was the case that you took active part in. We are overworked, you might have forgotten. I think that you should, with the use of suggestion, help your patient to finish the dream. Hypnosis can be too invasive. Try to ask him about his past. Accepting traumatic events he has experienced could be the starting point in merging his different selves. I'm looking forward to your next letter. Greetings from Abraham. That seems like some real poor advice, considering that his recurring dream is killing his entire family. He wakes up before he kills his family, but he keeps having this recurring dream. I don't know that that is really a great idea, but apparently Abraham knows more than we do, so here is also a follow-up to that magazine cover that we saw earlier. Disturbing effects of new treatment method. The treatment method for severe psychological disorders by Dr. Stephen Dowell is based on applying strong visual stimuli to the patient. It is aimed at putting the patient in a hypnotic trance, during which he stands face to face with his fears and deepest thoughts. The results of the treatment, however, are far from expectations. So far, following therapeutic sessions with the doctor's films, patients have plunged into apathy, depression, or experienced epilepsy attacks continuing a long time after their appointment. The main association of psychologists is watching Dr. Stephen Dowell with anxiety. They plan to meet with the author of this controversial research. I can't really say that I'm surprised, if I'm being honest. Not good for us, but not really overly surprising. I mean, this game takes place in the 70s. It was a different time. I'm not sure how much truth there is to what went on in real life, but this is not going to end well for us. And then, of course, the pipe burst as soon as we picked up the fuses, which would have allowed us to get out of here, because nothing is ever just that simple and easy. And this is where the puzzle comes in with these different valves on the wall. So you'll see this diagram here, and it's supposed to give you the solution to the puzzle, which you would think, looking at it, would be relatively straightforward. The way that I looked at it anyways when I first saw it was that I would put the white ends where the point is. but someone else might interpret it differently because it's not like this is labeled black and white. But you're gonna want to do the opposite of what my brain thought that we were supposed to do. So you're gonna come over here, and north and south, we are going to put white in the center, top and bottom, and then east and west, we're going to face the white parts outwards. And once you've done that, you'll hear the steam turn off and we can get the heck out of here. So not too bad of a detour, not too scary for a basement, and we actually got some pretty decent plot down there as well. And from there, we'll be able to go into the kitchen, and the entity that would have killed us before is now gone, thankfully. And this area is largely the same. We're not seeing a whole lot of change, but there are a few extra things that we can look at. Another creepy bird statue that apparently I'm having a hard time hovering over. Thank you very much. This one has some text on the plaque. Thought 1940. I always fear that thought may not come back home. Yeah, that definitely was not there before. And then as we come into the kitchen, we have a picture that Theodore has done of his family with that shadow present again, once again. And then we have an audio log here to listen to. And I can't remember if I pointed it out or not. I think I forgot, but these are important to listen to because they do count as their own achievement. And I think they give a lot of really good information of the story as a whole. So let's go ahead and listen.
Patient Edward, 41. Taking some pieces of advice from my friend Abraham, I established that Eddie suffers from a very mild split personality disorder. The other personality hasn't shown yet and hasn't taken him under control. There are only problems with memory and mild tics. I have to think about the kind of therapy I will apply.
And it's very interesting because in Stephen's recordings, he sounds very logical and very reasonable, but I guess at some point he changed and his therapy became a little bit too extreme because we did see that he was getting into trouble with the board of psychologists or whatever. And I think that's pretty much everything. So if you want, you can open up some drawers here just to add on to the drawer count. And we're kind of just waiting around for that phone to ring. So kill a couple of extra minutes and explore around if you wish. And then once that phone rings, you know it's time to move on.
Hello? Stephen? Are you here? Stephen? It's Eddie.
So now we are back in the hospital, but not in our office. It appears that we are back in the morgue. So here's another one of Theodore's drawings. Not a very good one. I don't know what those are supposed to be, but we will pick that up just for the sake of collection.
Daddy, I'm lost. It was so sad. I lost my figurines. Please find them for me.
And we can go in a lot more of the doors now, and we are going to have to search for his figurines, so that's what the drawing was but it's incredible that the drawing is pretty much exact to what the toys are. Who in God's name gives this as a gift to their kid and they're like, here you go, kid, here's some fun figurines to play with? And again, these look like wooden toys, so I don't know if these were made by somebody, but oh my god, if that kid doesn't have nightmares, he's going to at some point. So there's going to be 3 of these toys for us to find, and you will notice once again that things have sort of moved around in the morgue. For example, when we were here earlier, this photo was here, but it was kind of slightly over to the left. And this is a moment, once again, where I really wish that I could zoom in just to see what's kind of going on in that picture, but it's a little bit difficult to see. So still some doors that are blocked off, but kind of worth exploring and going into most of these rooms. We have yet another ink blot. And more importantly, another one of Teddy's drawings. This one of a crow. So Stephen's obsession with crows has really seemed to be noticed by Theodore. But at least there's more lights on in the morgue this time around. The last time we were here, it was so dark we could barely see a damn thing. And as with the downstairs in the morgue, the upstairs has changed slightly as well. Not by much, but we will notice a few differences as we go along. For example, in room 6 here, the furniture has changed. The privacy screen has been moved and the side table has been moved as well. And then in here, we will get the other half of that newspaper, which again, I wish you could go back and reference to remember the title of the news article, but it doesn't really matter. It's pretty easy to follow along with and to understand. So someone stabbed our wife 30 times, which is extremely excessive violence. You don't need to stab somebody 30 times to murder them. Our office has changed slightly as well. We've got a turned over chair here. The lights are off. It was a bit brighter and a bit nicer when we were here last time. So we will look at the 2 things on the desk. The first is another letter from Abraham. Stephen, analyzing your previous letters and observations, I believe that the problem is connected with redacted. Please give it some more thought. I am worried about you and your family. When I come back from redacted, I will visit you and we will talk. Abraham. P.S. Please send your wife and child someplace. Make sure that they are safe. Apparently, we did not listen to Abraham's warning.
Patient Eddie, 41. Day. Having acquainted with the traumatic Eddie's past life, violence in the family, and pathology, I've decided that I will use a less invasive method of treatment we can handle without hypnosis. The confrontation with the past and dreams connected with some mild anxiolytics should be enough. I think that finishing the dream, so killing the wife and child, can join his split selves. All we need to do is wait and observe.
Yeah, I still just think, wouldn't that just be such a bad idea? I mean, clearly in this case it was, but just in general, that just seems like a really piss poor idea. I'm just saying. Looking at the audio file is required in order to move on. So if you're stuck and you're not sure where to go, Once we have listened to that, you'll see that the hospital gurney has moved out of the way. And we'll get to go to a never before explored area. This is just another part of the hospital here. And there are a few things for us to look at. So we're going to go to the restricted area.
Breaking news. As the investigation has shown, the police have established that the brutal murder of the family of the famous doctor of psychology was caused by the local gardener, Edward S.
So once again, just reinforcing things that we already know. And we're going to get some pretty juicy stuff behind here. The registration desk for the hospital. We have another ink blot here. And then in one of these drawers at the very end, we've got the second of Teddy's very unfortunate, horrible toys. We can go into the door next to the registration. Office. What was that supposed to be? Like a chainsaw? A leaf blower? I don't know my tools well enough to know exactly what that was supposed to be. But we can open up the stalls here. The last stall has a toilet full of toilet paper. But more importantly, it has our next duck collectible. We haven't had one of these in a while, I feel like. We've just been moving on along. And then finally, we have our last figurine. So we've now collected all of Teddy's toys. And now we're gonna get some crazy shit happening here. Now this is going to segue into our second flying sequence, like we did earlier with the crow that we interacted with in the cage. This one is even shorter than the first one and even easier. But I'm just warning you because it does kind of come out of nowhere and it is quite a bit darker than the last one. So remember, it's right stick to steer. We're just going to go right into the light and that's it. We don't have to do any more of these crow segments and you should get an achievement for flying through that.
Thank you, honey. But why?
Alright, so we are now in almost complete darkness, and I do apologize. This is probably the darkest portion of the game, and I really hope that this will translate okay on the recording. We are back in the garden now, which has also changed ever so slightly. We can see that Edward's vehicle is here. He did mention parking it in front of the greenhouse. And this is another area that if we walk into, we will get killed. But this is my favorite farming spot to farm these deaths needed for the achievement. And there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, again, it's easy. It's just an easy spot to do it in. But on the seat here, we have one of Theodore's drawings. This one just gives you the hint in drawing form instead of in a verbal warning like it did in the kitchen. And then if you go towards the back of the van, back towards the well, there is a rubber ducky, our next collectible, in this bucket. Over by the driver's side, you can see that we need to replace the fuse in order to be able to turn the lights on and to dispel the darkness. But because there is a duck here and because there is one of Teddy's drawings here, I think this is a good spot to farm deaths. Just in case you miss one of Teddy's drawings or you miss one of the ducks. There are 15 of the ducks, and they're not as in abundance as things like the drawings or the documents or other things that you could have an easier time sort of collecting. So if you're worried about missing a duck, or you're worried about missing some of Teddy's drawings, or you just want to grab the deaths here, you're gonna have to be killed a couple of times anyways. I would just recommend dying here until your achievement pops, and each cycle that you die and you come back to life, grab the drawing, grab the duck, rinse and repeat. And that way you know that if you miss a duck, you don't have to fret, because this game has zero backtracking. The ducks are a bit of a more difficult collectible, and then you've also got Teddy's drawings in the bag as well. So that is my farming spot that I like to do just to work on a few of those achievements. But of course we need to worry about turning on the lights on the vehicle. So here is yet another one of Teddy's drawings, which are of course getting darker. And then in this garden shed area, there are a few things. We have a poem, I guess it looks like, from Eddie. Sometimes I suffer terribly because I have to restrain myself. When I see you preparing dinner, holding a beautiful knife in your hand, I imagine us together with cold steel in your bowels. I look at your beautiful eyes, glazed with tears, and your life slowly fades. I dream of giving you a last kiss on your fading lips. Nice. That's romantic, I guess, if you're a killer. So kind of wonder if he became a little bit too close to your wife, maybe got a little obsessed with her, maybe she rejected his advances. We still don't really know the full course of events or how everything came about and in what order. Should also note, of course, that if you wanted to pick up a couple of extra documents, you wanted to get a few extra points for picking up documents, you could go and pick up Eddie's poem and then get killed after you've also picked up the drawing and the duck, but that is completely up to you. All that we needed was that duct tape that was sitting on the shelf. Once we have that, we can fix the fuses, turn on the lights, and we are now safe to go into the greenhouse. So unfortunately, we have an article here about our son. As a result of an ongoing investigation, the police have found the body of Theodore Dowell. The son of a well-known psychologist was murdered and buried in a greenhouse on the premises by gardener Edward S. Now there is also a typo in this, and again, I hate to be nitpicky, it's more just because I've noticed it more than anything, but Theodore's name for some reason doesn't have an E on the end, but in this article it does. But every time else we've seen his name, it doesn't have the E at the end. So we'll pick that up first before we pick up the toy that is in the grave. And then we'll answer the phone to finish up the level. Now, the mouse that was in the hole was a toy that was sitting in the greenhouse as well.
Come for me, please. Mom is lying here. She is so cold.
So here we are back in the house getting a very, very different version of the home. Our kitchen is completely destroyed. We can't even go in there at all. We're going to turn off the TV and wait for it to come back on again. Do not leave the room until this comes back on. We have to wait for it. So we can pick up Theodore's drawing. It looks like he's drawn us, probably at work up in our office, with the shadow yet again. So maybe the shadow are Steven's clients. Maybe Theodore doesn't like some of the clients that he has. Once the TV comes back on, if you walk up to it and you examine it, you will get an achievement for doing that as well. And that's all there is in this room. Our house is slowly getting destroyed, little by little. And now we can't go in there at all, so I hope that you picked up that achievement like I told you, because again, there is no chapter select or anything like that, so you would have to play the entire game over again to get that. We are allowed to go upstairs this time. And downstairs. So this time around there is a little bit more here to see. There's a lot more that is open to us. We can also go back into Theodore's bedroom, which you can see has also changed. The teddy bear staring at us is a little creepy. We've got another drawing here. Oh my, this one is extremely dark. That looks to be his mother being stabbed. And again, our crow is ever present. I'm not sure what the thing is on the left. I don't know if that means she died in the kitchen. Like, to me, that looks like, I don't know, like a cookie jar sitting on a table. And the sword will not be here this time, just as a note. If you did miss it earlier, it's not here for you to collect, so just keep that in mind. There is, however, another collectible duck here. And then finally, we have another book about crows. Now this one is just an animal psychology book. And this one, I think, is probably a gift that Stephen gave to Theodore. We don't really know that. It doesn't say. It could also be another one of Stephen's books that, you know, his son has. But it brings up the two crows' thought and memory. We ran into the statue of thought earlier. So all of these things are just kind of connected. Again, just kind of neat to see these things and to pick up on them. And despite the fact that this door does open leading down to the basement, it is blocked off. It's completely flooded, but there are a pair of boots here. Probably the boots that Edward had on when he was burying our son, which is pretty disturbing and scary to think about. So all that's left now is to go upstairs. Now, this door has been unlocked. This is the first time we're able to see this first door that's on the right as we come up the stairs. But before we go in there and have a look around, there is one little document here, which is again another article in the Psycholozone magazine. So we have now been brought before the Committee of Ethics. Things have escalated even further. The experimental method of treating severe psychological disorders developed by Dr. Stephen Dowell has been raising controversy for a long time. After sessions conducted at the doctors, the condition of patients significantly deteriorate, yet Dr. Dowell is convinced of the procedure's correctness. The Maine Association of Psychologists has conducted interviews among people examined with the use of Dowell's films. The investigation led to a former patient who has committed suicide following his experimental sessions. The young girl threw herself under a speeding train. The psychologist treating her is known to have hidden all traces and methods leading to the patient. The doctor has gone far as falsifying the autopsy files to avoid consequences. So that might be where the autopsy came in earlier. The Medical Ethics Committee has put Dowell's right to exercise his profession at stake, and the injured family has announced legal proceedings. Yeah, that is horrible. Imagine sending your child for therapy and it ends up doing exactly the opposite. And that's pretty shady of him to try and cover that up, you know? So there's nothing really to see in this hallway. A lot of doors we can't open. So we're going to follow it to the very end and open the one door that we can, which is going to lead us to another audio log.
Patient. Data. Today is 28th of March. March. No. Weird case. Only experimental methods. Only experimental. No. Why him? Why him? I don't know. Weird case. Weird case.
Yep, so the good doctor is officially, absolutely losing it. Here is also the other crow statue. This is Memory. This would be the other, I guess, twin or other portion of the bird statue that we found earlier, and it was also referenced in the book that we just found downstairs. And we have to go and answer the phone, of course. And it makes me question at this point whether Stephen actually likes crows, whether he likes birds. They were talking about showing things in the films that might scare people. So I don't know if maybe all the photos of birds and stuff that we're seeing around the house aren't actually what's in reality. They're just there as a part of kind of what's going on in Stephen's mind. I don't know.
On Monday, Eddie was born.
So the house is going to be falling apart around us here. This is not going to be the last visit to the home.
On Friday, he had a family on his own. On Wednesday, his dreams did not allow him to sleep. So on Thursday day, he visited the doctor to confess so deep. On Friday night, he did what the doctor told him to do. On Saturday, he did not have his family. He did the deed.
So here we are, dropped into another new area. We have not seen anything like this before. I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to represent. It's kind of weird, funky scenery, but we are going to see key points here.
My name is Dr. Strange.
So we're seeing this was his desk at the hospital, I believe, right? We've got the white bird cage. We're still seeing a lot of the symbolism from earlier. This was one of the first text documents that we picked up at the very start of the game at his home office. So I don't know if this is our subconscious and maybe we're just replaying through key moments in our life. I think a lot of things when they come into games like this are kind of open to interpretation, so some of Theodore's things that we've been seeing throughout the game. The wooden horse, I believe, was in the basement. The gun was in his room. And these text documents, once again, are not new. This was the report from his teacher. But I still pick them up just in case they do count towards the overall document total. And behind the desk, this is the final part of the knight armor set. We found the sword and the shield quite some time ago, but this would be the third piece of it. So if you didn't get that achievement earlier, you would be able to pop it now for finding all 3 pieces of Theodore's knight costume. And then these flower petals, I believe we've seen falling in the garden area.
Honey, gain control over him, please.
So things are getting pretty sinister here. It's obviously taken us a while. It's taken us the whole game to piece together all of these events. So maybe now that Stephen is remembering, it's just becoming really painful for him, you know? So here's a note from 1973, quite a ways back. Teddy's 3rd birthday was great. The party was held in our garden. All dishes and desserts were made from fruits that we picked there. The only thing that got me worried was that Stephen took an active interest in Teddy's mental development. He's only 3 and his father is already forcing him to learn how to read. I have to talk to him. At what age do children start to read? Is 3 like unreasonably young? I don't have kids of my own, so I have no idea. So that was a new note, just giving us a glimpse into Stephen's past. This one here is an old note. We did find this one earlier. But, you know, that does give us a bit of a clue that maybe Stephen obviously wasn't so perfect either. We know that based on his very, very controversial methods of psychology at work. But perhaps he wasn't that great of a dad either. You know, maybe there were things going on at home. There is a duck in this area. We just have to kind of keep walking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until the game allows us to advance. And then once we pick that duck up, we're just going to be in another big white open expanse here. Go through a few doors and everything seems to be back to normal, more or less. Heavy rain outside, but no freaky images on the television.
Steven, can I get into the bathroom for a while?
Our wife appears alive and well, so maybe this is back in the past now. Another one of Theodore's drawings here. Make sure to pick this one up. That crow is looking very, very sinister. There is also a key that we're gonna need, which is hiding in a pretty good spot behind some pictures on the bookcase. Now this key looks pretty much identical to the one that we used to open up the greenhouse. I don't know if they just got lazy with like the design, but we'll pick that one up. We now have access to this room. This is a new room that we haven't had access to in the past, and this looks to be Susan and Steven's bedroom. What a horrifying image to have above your bed, by the way. Just throwing that out there. So there are a few things that we can look at in here. There is a letter on the dressing table. And this looks like some diary entries from Susan. Due to too many responsibilities, I don't have time to take care of our garden. I have asked Stephen to help me, to hire somebody to help. At least that much he can offer. That's all I can ask for. I can't stand these maniacal attempts to make a genius of our child. Stephen is out of line. Taking our child to the hospital and testing him with mental development methods is a sick fad. Sometimes I think that this marriage was a big mistake. I will drive Teddy to his grandma. He could use a little break from his father. So this was in 1975, 2 years on from the last entry, which means that Teddy would have been about 5 at this point. But these are nice because it kind of gives us a little glimpse into how Susan Dowell was feeling. We haven't really got a lot from her up until we saw that first entry in the white area. It's been focused a lot on Edward and Stephen, and we've seen quite a bit from Theodore, but really not a lot from Mrs. McDowell. So I will come back for her towel later. You have to grab her a towel and bring it to her. This room is now unlocked.
Honey, bring me the towel from the bedroom. I forgot about it completely.
So this is obviously the bathroom. She's in there having a shower. But I'm going to go back into Teddy's room one more time. And again, we can see things have completely changed since this is in the past. This is a younger Teddy. He's still in his crib at this point. Interesting because there was a drawing on the table. So again, realities are still kind of blurring, I think. And then in this chest, we have yet another duck. So do be sure to get that key, especially if you didn't kind of farm, quote, a few extra ducks when you were farming deaths earlier in the garden. If you kind of followed my advice. In my playthrough, this is where I got the duck achievement, despite the fact that there are still a few ducks for us to grab. This is unblocked, but we can't go in there, so it's really just Teddy's room, the living room, dining room, and then our bedroom that we can go into. And we just have one solitary, sad-looking towel. I mean, these people got a lot of money. You would think that they would splurge on a nice fluffy towel with like a huge thread count, you know? So we can hang up a towel for her, which I will do in just a second. But I'm gonna look at this note first from Edward. I have mixed feelings about our relation. Stephen is my employer, and I owe him a lot. I know, this is not a discussion to be held through a letter. Let's meet in the garden in 2 days in the usual spot. Edward. Dun dun dun. So she was having an affair. Well, that certainly adds a layer of complexity. Well, and then you wonder, is she talking about her husband or is she talking about Edward? And maybe that's why the game has waited until this point to really give us a look into Susan's psyche, you know, so that they could drop that bombshell on us. The plot thickens.
I'm staying at my parents' house with Teddy tonight.
Back in the office yet again. Things are looking relatively normal. A bit of furniture has been arranged, but there's only one document for us to look at, and once again, something that we sent to our friend Abraham. Thank you so much for sending me Dr. Alfred Bonet's publication about the verification of children's IQ. Thanks to it, I have come up with a great idea. I will not let you in on the details yet. I do not want to jinx it. All I can say is that it will be connected with increasing the IQ of very small children in the initial part of their mental development. It will be revolutionary. Imagine this: intellectual elites developed from their earliest age to advance our world and science. The mankind may witness great discoveries thanks to my research. So that gives us a little follow-up about what Susan was talking about, kind of using his own son to test this theory. And when we looked at Theodore's report card earlier on in the game, he was getting good grades. He was getting A's and B's, but he was getting B's. So this possibly didn't work, possibly backfired, possibly didn't work the way that he wanted. Now, we are able to go into room 9 finally. Room 6 over here is still open, but there isn't anything new to grab from there this time around. So we have this new room. There is a chest here that we are not able to open. We have an audio log, as well as something that we can toggle here on the projector, although nothing's playing. My assumption is just that this would have been where he would have taken Theodore for this IQ testing, right? Stephen would have sat here with the projector. He's even got the crib in here, which, yeah, does seem a little bit excessive. Maybe not for Theodore, because I think Theodore would have been about 5 at the time that Stephen was trying this, but possibly other young children that he tried this on as well. Kind of ominous. This is a really kind of like creepy room, just like this, I don't know, like the side area. This just seems really, really sketchy.
Research theme: the test of the therapy increasing the intelligence among children. The subject of the research, Theodore Dowell. The first attempts to increase IQ, I started using suggestion and manipulation method during REM sleep. The subject handled the experiment very well. I began the observation and started the manual visual tests phase.
So that should allow you to get the achievement for listening to all of the audio logs. That's where I got this achievement anyways. And once we've taken care of that, we can go downstairs. Back to our favorite place, the morgue! I don't know how I feel about somebody referring to their child as test subject. I think it does kind of blur the lines a little bit. And I can see why his wife would have been upset. He's taking his work home, and he's using his work against his son. Now, this, once again, if you go through here, you try to go through here without putting a light into this spotlight, this will kill you. So if you haven't farmed deaths in this game yet, we are getting to the end. I would recommend using this opportunity to do that now before you kind of go on any further. But I've shown all the locations to do that. I've talked about that quite a bit. So we're going to keep going through this area, starting with this creepy machine here. We get to light up the buttons and it will open up a chute on the side for us. And it will allow us to get the key for the chest upstairs. So I'm going to light up the first, the second, and the fourth button. Just skip the third button altogether. And we will get another duplicate of this stupid key. And once again, just slight changes to these rooms. Like, there's nothing in this one, but if you wanted to just have a look around, you could. There was a picture in there the last 2 times. There's not one in there now. And I don't think we were ever able to get into this room, if I'm not mistaken. This first room on the right. I could be wrong, but it has our light bulb. It has our key item. And that's really all that's down here. We're not able to go into the morgue, which is no great loss. I'm not too upset about that. We're gonna dispel the darkness here, and we can go back upstairs now that we have our key. So the first part of the game really focused on his sessions with Edward, but once we figured out that Edward was responsible for killing our family, the latter part of the game has kind of focused on Stephen and his family and their relationship. So it's kind of a good shift, you know, things are really all starting to come together. There is a duck in this chest and another document. Talking to Abraham, once again. Dear Abraham, it's all gone to hell. My entire plan, all of it. Everything was based on suggestion and on an attempt to manipulate dreams in the REM phase. I was testing it on my son, Teddy. I thought it would not be harmful and that I had nothing to lose. But on the contrary, I would be the one to form the first genius in the family created with this method. His marks at school are higher, indeed, but he lacks empathy, and he has started to be afraid of the darkness. My wife forbade me to continue my research. Why did I even attempt to try this on my son? I am abandoning this project and sending your materials back. Thank you for them, but I will not need them anymore. P.S. I might have an interesting patient soon. Ah, so yes, this was most likely, you know, pre-Edward, of course. And we can't get to the ringing phone this time around. We can try, but we just kind of have to jiggle the handle and wait for things to change. Similar to the morgue, I guess, at the very beginning. They're getting a little heavy on the jump scares, which gets a little old after a while, but we are changing gears pretty significantly here because now we're just in a regular version of the greenhouse. Nothing horrible this time around. I think this is the first time we've been in here that we haven't been faced with some absolute nightmare horror. And we're going to need some bolt cutters in order to move forward. But yeah, this is nice. We've got some really nice, you know, beautiful music. This is how a garden should be. It should be nice and calming. And you can really see this in its full splendor and beauty. I wonder how big Steven's house and property is, because this is not like a garden. This is so many gardens. There's just so much here, you know? No wonder he had to get somebody to manage it. It's crazy. So you can see here, again, I can't zoom in or anything, but there's the mouse toy that we found in Teddy's grave earlier. Our pair of bolt cutters are very easy for us to come across. We've got one of our bird statues. I don't think either of these are the ones with the plaques on them, thought or memory, but I believe we found this one in the house somewhere else as well. But at this time, Edward was involved in our lives because that's his vehicle. His car that he talked about parking to do all the work that was needed. We just enjoy the nice scenery, nature. I mean, if this would be part of his property, I mean, this is incredible. He must have been a very, very successful psychologist because, yeah, wow. So we come out into this beautiful area with a boat, and this is how we advance, but there are still some things to look at before we go ahead and do that. On the shoreline, really, really close to the water, we have another duck. And then this is the picnic that our wife was talking about having with Edward. 1976, so a year after the last ones were written. The strange sessions with Teddy have allowed to obtain the outcomes that my husband so strongly desired. Is a toxic father-son relation worth it? Teddy is no longer as happy as he had been before. He had become very afraid of the darkness. On the one hand, this is normal at his age. I truly don't know. I can only rely on Eddie, but he seems strange recently. I have been trying to improve my marriage, but the complete lack of Steven's interest is just killing me. He is constantly talking about his new treatment method. I feel imprisoned in this relationship. I cannot see any future for it. I know it is a bit reckless, but I am beginning to feel freer with Eddie. I enjoy the interest that only he is giving me. So the classic trope of being too ingrained in your work to pay attention to your family. So it makes you wonder whether Stephen even noticed, whether he knew. And the shadows in Theodore's drawings could be just him being afraid of the dark, you know? So once you've looked at that document, you've picked up the duck, and you've picked up the ore, that's all there is for this area, and you can leave at this point. And this little boat ride is automatic, so feel free to look around at the scenery. We can see there's some fish underwater. At least we get a nice, relaxing break somewhere in all of this crazy madness, you know? Back in our white world here. We're gonna learn some more things, I'm sure.
Therapy increasing the intelligence among children.
And again, going back to the first document that we found in this first white area. So I guess we got about 3 years or so of diary entries from Susan. Stephen's inappropriate interest kind of started when Teddy was about 3, and by the time that he was 6, I'm sure Stephen kind of abandoned the idea of continuing because Teddy has started to be afraid of the dark. It's caused a rift in his marriage, and Susan went to find solace with Eddie.
Just for a while, to fulfill my dreams. During our romance.
Now, at this point of the game, I already got my achievement for collecting all of the documents, so you will most likely have already gotten that by this point. If you haven't, don't fret. We do still have a little bit of the game to go. We are nearing the end, and I would still recommend just picking up these repeat documents if that is the case.
The subject handled the experiment very well.
And there is another one of our ducks very cleverly hiding here behind this fortune-telling machine. Again, I don't know who brought these in or like why they're in the game really. Like, they do kind of seem a little out of place, but they're creepy. I am not a fan.
I hereby open the trial against Edward about Susan Dowell and
Alright, so yes, we are nearing the end. We are seeing that Edward has been brought towards the judge and the jury and has been charged with the murder. And here is the book from the very, very beginning of the game. One of the first things that we found, this copy of Breed and Birds Taxidermy from Stephen's dad. So now we can move on. And we are in an entirely new area. We are inside of a prison cell. Well, hopefully... Well, thank you. I was gonna say, let me out, I'm innocent. You've got the wrong man. I'm assuming we're here just so that we can figure out more about the trial. We can figure out more about what they know about Edward. We're gonna shift back to Edward, I think, for a bit. So there's a lot of doors to open in this area. There's quite a few documents as well. So this first interrogation room. So it looks like this interview is taking place in 1977. So that's the year after we saw Susan's last document. So she's been in an affair with Edward for probably a year or more at this point, until things kind of finally started to boil over with her murder and the murder of her son. The interrogation is conducted by Chief Inspector Samuel Wilson. After many attempts to make contact with the suspect, we still do not have any information. The accused is constantly smiling and indistinctly repeating a sentence that reads, "The nightmares have stopped." His gaze is absent. He does not make eye contact with the interlocutor. He probably does not make anything of the position that he is in. Without the presence of a forensic psychologist, we are not able to obtain more information. It is assumed that the case will be closed with an insanity plea. Yeah, And how awful would Steven feel? Because it's, like, kind of his fault, you know? Like, finish the dream.
Good. So maybe you would tell us about your authorial therapy. What do you think, Mr. Dow? Can you hear me? It's better now, isn't it? So, can we continue? Great. Did you know that Susan Dow was pregnant?
Oh, well, now we do. Oh my god, this just keeps getting juicier and juicier. My god. Okay. So here is a continuation of the interrogation that we were just reading about. There is now a forensic psychologist, Mrs. Vanessa Green, present. Thanks to Mrs. Vanessa, we have managed to come into contact with the suspect. It has been established that he is single. He worked as a gardener for the Dowell family. He said that for the last months, he had been taking part in a therapy and that it was to cure him from his split personality disorder. He admitted that he had killed his wife and child, but as he emphasized, he had done it in his dream because Dr. Dowell had told him to do so. It had been a part of his therapy. We have finally figured it out. It is necessary to speak with Dr. Dowell. Aha! So, I mean, if he was having an affair with Susan and she's pregnant, it could be his child. Perhaps that's where the whole wife and child thing comes in. There's another document on the other side of the table. John, I know that tomorrow is Bowman's shift, so I've hidden the key for the door switches in a safe place. Don't tell him anything. Let's drive him nuts for a while. So unfortunately for us, they've hidden what we need to be able to get into this little case on the wall, so we're gonna have to come back for that momentarily. And I believe if we go across the hall here, this will bring us into the storage room. And the only thing in here is a duck, which is just sitting on this shelf here. There are 2 doors to get in and out of storage, so just check the bottom shelves depending on what door you come in through. It'll be closer or farther away. And then we have 2 doors at the end of this hall. These look like desks for officers. There's a document on this desk over here. Again, more interrogation protocol. So this is our witness interrogation once we were brought in. The suspect is shocked. There is no rational contact with him. It is understandable in his position. He hasn't said anything new. After the murder, there were many different comments from the psychology world in the press. The witness has only mentioned that his therapy for curing a mental split disorder had been very ineffective. He hasn't commented on that. Yeah, I'm sure Steven feels absolutely awful because in a lot of ways, he would blame himself, and I mean, you can play what if all day. We don't actually know if his family would have ended up murdered regardless, but trying to cure somebody by finishing the dream of murder was probably not the best idea in the world. There's also a padlock here, which I'm going to come back and unlock in just a moment. If we go into the office across the hall, again, for some reason, we just have a very weird fixation with syphilis. I probably haven't looked at all the posters in the game, but there's quite a few of them. And it's weird that these are, like, in the police station. I might look at a few posters on my way backtracking, because there's quite a few to look at in here, but I'm not going to let myself get too distracted here. Here is our combination for the padlock. So we need to go right, then left, then right again. And in order to figure out what the actual numbers are that you need, we need to interpret the numbers by listening to Morse code. So these are the numbers in Morse code, and we would need to listen on the radio for the sequence to figure out what our code is. And the code is 327. So we need to do 3 right, 2 left, and then 7 right, which will open that baby right up, and we can get the key to open up that box on the wall. And that will pretty much finish up this level. So yeah, if you want to, you can look at some of the posters. Some of them are interesting. I don't know if they are references to something or, you know, what these are here for. But just stuff in the environment. We need to go back to the interrogation office, which was over here. Open this up. Flip the switch. And that is going to open up some of the cells back where we started. And that's going to allow us to go ahead and pick up the ringing phone, which is just in this first cell to the left. And unfortunately, it doesn't open any of the other ones, and even if it did, there's really nothing to see in there, so we're just gonna move on.
Listen, Bowman, give me some creeps, Doctor. I won't manage alone.
So it looks like we are gearing up for the trial. We're gonna go to court and see Edward brought to justice. There is a document here on the pew next to us. The examination conducted by Dr. Maslow's team should not be taken into consideration during the investigation. Dr. Maslow could influence the examination in order to help his friend, Dr. Bandura says. Dr. Dowell was known for his controversial methods of treatment and the is fact that... Oh, that's not proper English. I got a stroke reading that. The fact is, in the past, he has probably led to a patient's death, he adds. Yeah, so probably calling upon some other expert witnesses, trying to get some other people from the field to come and help us out, because our reputation is not looking so good, and we may have, in fact, had a hand in contributing to this tragedy. So we just have to wait a moment for the door to open. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can really do. There's nothing else to look at except for some presidents. I don't know why this is taking so long. I guess it's realistic, you know, when you actually go to court, you have to wait your turn and you can't go in when other people are testifying. You gotta wait your turn. But I do not think it is necessary to just make me wait out here. We're almost to the end of the game. I need to see how it ends. There we go. I just had to turn and walk away. So as you approach the judge, if you look over to your left, coming down the aisle at the very last pew, you have yet another duck. This is our second to last one. We are almost through.
I hereby open the trial against Edward Groom about Susan Dowell and Theodore Dowell's murder. Do the prosecutor and counsel wish to say anything before the trial is started?
I would like to enclose the report about my client's insanity to the evidence, as well as recordings made by Dr. Dowell during the therapy.
Mr. Edward, could you tell us about the relation that was between you and Mrs. Susan Dow, Dr. Stephen Dow's wife, that tried to cure you? I would like to enclose documents from Susan Dow's autopsy to the evidence. Basing on these, Your Honor, as well as the jury can get to know that the victim was pregnant with the defendant.
So it wasn't our baby. I wonder if they did paternity. I wonder if they had access to that way back in 1977. I actually don't know.
I opened the trial against Stephen Dowell about malpractice against Edward, who caused Susan and Theodore Dowell's death. Does the prosecutor and counsel wish to say anything before the trial has started?
My client, as a doctor, always takes care about patients' welfare. In the enclosed evidence, Your Honor may read about many difficult cases that have been cured by the defendant. He was trying to cure his protege at any cost to ease the pain.
I would like to enclose to the evidence the description of one therapy conducted by the defendant, which, as we can read, also finished with a failure. The girl, with similar illness like Edward, who under the influence of the therapy made suicide.
And did the defendant realize that his wife was pregnant, not with him, but with Edward?
So we were definitely on trial ourselves. It sounds like we kind of had to face the music and own up to our part in this and, you know, what we did, the mistakes that we made. Alright, a little bit more reading here before we go answer that phone. After the appearance of new evidence, which is Susan Dowell's autopsy protocol, we have come to know that she was in the first month of pregnancy. Furthermore, the father of the child is suspect Edward, redacted. We have established that Stephen had a motive and the skills to manipulate Edward. So the suspect is still showing a complete lack of awareness. He experienced ambivalent states from hysteria to complete apathy. During interrogation, the accompanying psychologist came up with a thesis about Mr. Dowell's insanity, which might have been caused by many traumatic experiences in a short period of time. Mr. Dowell, that's me. There's also this document here, which I guess is just another article shitting on us from this same Psycholozone magazine. The tragic events from my friend's past had a very bad influence on his mental health condition, says Dr. Abraham Maslow. Ah, Dr. Abraham, our friend, Dr. Maslow. Friend of the accused, suspected of manipulating Dr. Stephen Dowell, which in turn has led him to murder his family. I deny the rumors saying that Stephen pretended to have a mental incompetence. I have examined him. He was also examined by other psychologists and psychiatrists who were strange to him, Dr. Maslow adds. Aha! So the truth of it all has finally come out. Edward is Stephen, and Stephen is Edward. Two sides of the same coin. And it appears that we were found guilty, probably by pleading insanity, which would make sense. I mean, if this is our room at the mental institution, this is a pretty nice room, I have to say. We've got the ink blots, the many ink blots that we've come across. We've got our psychology books. That ominous white chair that was in front of our desk at the hospital.
Stephen, can I see you in my office?
So yeah, that is the big twist, which some of you might have seen coming. I do feel like it's somewhat obvious from an early point that that is what's going on, but not all the pieces fall together in place right away, you do kind of enjoy the last little bit of the game to sort of fill in some of the cracks. Now, I also don't know if this is the same hospital that we were at earlier, maybe just a different wing. It would make sense because we were going through a hospital, level earlier, and it kind of looks similar, Again, similar chairs, similar decor. And there's the TV. So you can see where Steven's mind was blending his perceived reality with his, actual reality of what he's going through right now. And our last document of the game here is going to be the full news article that we have picked up in pieces. You can actually see where the 3 pieces have all been ripped. So we found just the headline at first, then the middle, and now we have found the full bottom piece, which has told us that the father of the family is the one responsible for the commission of all these horrible acts. And yeah, that is pretty horrific, to stab your wife 30 times and then strangle your child in his sleep. And not only that, but he stabs and kills Susan, and then he waits for 2 days to kill Theodore for whatever reason.
How are you feeling today? Everything's okay? I think it's time to show you something. Let's go to the next room. Have a seat and make yourself comfortable.
And imagine how horrible that would be for Theodore. I mean, hopefully he didn't know. Because we don't really know, going back and looking at the things that Theodore was saying and some of his drawings, he did picture his mother being stabbed. We don't know if that's actually true. I guess it could be, potentially, if he knew his mother had been stabbed or he walked into it, but it's probably just, Steven's projections. And then we get to watch a film, because that went so well the first time around.
Our relationship started to pass away suddenly. Stephen treated me like a lodger, unwanted person, with whom he lived because it was a kind of interest. And I started to live on memories and projections that were so beautiful in my head, so perfect. Stephen was in them like years before, like when we moved into our new house and we planned to make a big garden, only for us. These memories made me stronger, helped me to survive, and wait for tomorrow with hope. First time, I thought that maybe I'm only dreaming, or the projections about him became ridiculously strong. He came to me like before, smiling, happy, with sparkles in his eyes. Similar situations repeated in the next weeks, and I, instead of looking for their source, was waiting till my loving Stephen came back, just for a while, to feel like before, like years ago. At the beginning of our relationship, Stephen often told me about interesting things from the psychology ward. During his studies, he met with the case of a patient with multiple personalities. I remember well this case because it seemed to be very exciting. So many different personalities in one body that differ in IQ, beliefs, talents, and even visual acuity. I hid my husband's illness to meet with Eddie, his second personality, to feel happy just for a while, to fulfill my dreams. During our romance, we often met in the garden. Today, I again talked with Eddie. He is in very bad condition. Stephen's therapy started to even scare him, he says. He must make terrible things to be cured and finally take a breath. As a last resort, I will send this recording to Abraham.
Yeah, so if you had doubts or questions about the game's plot, it basically all gets kind of spelled out to you at the very end there in the recording by Stephen's wife. It kind of makes me wonder if they're trying to say that Abraham is almost like the true villain in all of this, because he stated very clearly in the court documents that we found that he was completely aware of Stephen's multiple personalities, and yet he gave him this advice anyways. So maybe when Susan reached out for help, Abraham thought that Stephen would be a good study. That's just my understanding and kind of my theory, anyways. Even though Susan explains a lot of it, there are still, I think, some plot points that are definitely up for interpretation. And now all that's left really is just to pass through a series of doors and through hallways until the end of the game. Now we are going to be looking out for our last duck, and speaking of, it's right here. I couldn't quite remember where it was, but I knew it was in this end section. So the very last duck is right at the very, very end of the game. So that is all 15 of them. You should have all of the ducks at this point. If you didn't die and reload checkpoints and collect extra ducks, then congratulations. This should be your last one. And from this point on, we're just going to get right to the end here. So I'm still sort of left with questions. Like, I understand the overall plot of the game. I do think things are just sort of left up to interpretation. I still wonder if the crows are something that Stephen was actually afraid of, or whether it's just something that has been such a symbol for him all throughout his life, and that's why we're seeing them. What Teddy drew, I think, is also kind of maybe up to interpretation. Some of them, anyways. And I think that shadow that he was drawing in his pictures was of Edward. And to end things off, we're just gonna jump into the abyss. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is Rise of Insanity. So please tell me what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts. I have played this game several times. It is available, I think, on every single console. And there is also a VR version of the game as well. So even though it's an indie game, it's been out for quite a while and is pretty well established. So if this game interested you, then feel free to go and pick up a copy. You should be able to find it, I think, like I said, everywhere. Very, very short credit sequence. It was only worked on by a very small team of people. And I think for a very small team of people, this is not a bad product. I think there are better games in this genre as a whole, but I enjoy it for what it is. And I hope that you enjoyed it too. I hope that you enjoyed watching. I hope that I was able to walk you through the collectibles. And thank you all very much for coming on this journey with me, and hopefully I will be back sooner than later to provide another project for you all. Please let me know if you do enjoy this style of one long video where we just cover short games. Please let me know if you enjoy this genre of game, if you enjoy this sort of psychological mystery horror type of a vibe. For some reason, even the books I'm reading, this is just kind of the mindset that I'm in right now and I'm really enjoying. But I'm always up for feedback and recommendations, and willing to have a look at some other games that are perhaps a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more happy. Just please let me know your thoughts overall. I appreciate each and every single one of you, and I hope that you will stick around for my next project.